rise, salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Basil, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Basil here. Mrs. Bites.
Here.
Mr. Doty. Mr. Kurtz. Mr. Rathgeb.
Here.
Mr. Speed.
Here.
Mr. Fradowski. Mr. Wolf.
Here.
Mr. Martino.
Here. Item 4, the procedures for public participation, and I'll read them for anyone who's new here. Prepared statements that are to be read to the board should have a copy presented to the board prior to their being addressed. You come to the podium, speak on any item, sign in, state your name and address, and when your 3 minutes are over, you'll be asked to be seated. Any item that's not on the agenda, as well as agenda items that we act upon, comments will always be able to be made at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I got it. Yep.
Item 5 is announcements under agenda edits. Please add under item 18, personnel. A, there will be a motion to approve the following retirements and resignations. Robert Shannon, High School Director of Athletics. And B1 would be leave for Mr. Shannon. B3 is leave for a custodian. And item C5, add David Olafson to full clearance for volunteers. Also under announcements, there will be an executive session held after the committee of the whole meeting to discuss some confidential legal issues. Another announcement, this is a committee of the whole meeting, but there are several items we'll be voting on tonight because of time constraints. And something else I'd like to address at the beginning of the meeting, just to try and put it to rest. Many of you know there was an election video made by students of the school district. And someone started a rumor that these students were disciplined or being made to apologize to the board. I don't know how that started, but no students have been or will be disciplined, and the board does not expect an apology. Especially, I know personally, I would never want an apology that was directed. That makes no sense. However, students were questioned and may be questioned again because there isn't an ongoing investigation. And the investigation revolves around violation of School Policy 707, which says in part the use of school facilities shall not be granted for partisan political activity, etc., etc. And because there is an ongoing investigation, the board will not address this any farther tonight. So, having said that, is there any public comment on the announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, the superintendent's report. Mr. Harris?
It's all turned red.
There you go. Okay. First, I want to congratulate the girls' soccer team. I didn't know if I could say that first or last, so I just said it first. They won the District 3 championship on Saturday, beating Cumberland 2-1. Their next game, which will be kicking off the playoffs, will begin Tuesday. I believe it's in Exeter. Okay, so in Exeter. Okay, on tomorrow, Tuesday, the start of the annual Blue Jeans for Babies in the schools. For $5, you can purchase a button and wear jeans. Last year, the district made over $900. All proceeds benefit the March of Dimes.
Amity Lions Club Peace Poster Contest winner, Aaron Godey, grade 7.
Is Aaron here?
Aaron, are you here? Put on my glasses on. Okay. The poster contest judging took place November 6th at the middle school, and the winner, Aaron Godey, along with the winning posters, are here tonight.
Aaron, is your poster here?
Please.
Which
be
one
here.
is yours?
Would you like to add anything?
I mean, just for everybody in the public knows, I am part of the Lions Club. We've been doing this for a few years now in school. This is a worldwide project. So Aaron's poster will go to our district, and he wins that up to the states, and then from states to international. So they pick several winners. The first prize winner gets $5,000 in a trip to where they award the prize, and then there's I believe 23 additional prizes worth $500. So hopefully Aaron will move forward. We've had usually our district does get a winner in the state. So if not our club, another club like Exeter. So hopefully Aaron's poster will advance to the state. So thank you, Aaron.
Also, next week is American Education Week from the 16th through the 20th. Things that are happening in the buildings are the high school will be posting a message on the school marquee. Middle school will be serving baked goods. And the elementary will be hosting Educators for a Day on the 19th, where they will invite upper administration and board members to be Educators for a Day, and they will help co-teach a pre-planned Thanksgiving lesson. Okay. And now we have a PSBA Honor Roll of School Board Service Award. This is a little long. The
Sorry.
glasses come off. The legacy of school board service is firmly embedded in the history of our nation and its commitment to public education. Pennsylvania, as one of the founding colonies of the United States, clearly established the concept of schooling in its first constitution in 1776. Later, the Free School Act of 1834 marked the first permanent state interest in public education and the birth of the locally elected school board. School directors today have a challenging job in our complex society, giving more and more of their personal time to this non-paid volunteer effort. Since 1983, the Pennsylvania School Boards Association has been recognizing the contributions of dedicated local school directors with long-term service. School directors are first recognized when they reach 8 years of service, and again every 4 years thereafter, through the Honor Roll of School Board Service. The Honor Roll is the association's way of saying thank you to those individuals who exemplified leadership and statesmanship, giving unselfishly of their time and talents for the future of our public schools, and putting something back into their local communities through the guidance of the education of youth. Thank you, Andrew Basil, for your service.
Andrew, you've been on the board since '83 when we started this.
Seems that way.
And
In dog years.
And last but not least, I would like to say thank you for this is my first week, or 6th day here in Daniel Boone District, and I went out to visit all the schools, and I tried not to be too disruptive to the classrooms, because I know how hard it is for a teacher to set the class, and then for someone like me to walk in with the principal and totally disrupt everything. So if you saw me peeking in doors and windows, that's all I'm going to do. If the door was open, I may have stepped in and ran back out, because I know how hard it is to reset the class. But I spent a week at the high school, an hour at the middle school, and I think I joined the band in the elementary school program because they found out I played the saxophone. So if you see me at one of your, I'm there, second seat. So I just want to say thank you for everyone being so nice and gracious to me. I met a lot of teachers, a lot of students. They gave me a lot of ideas. And this week I'm in and out in Reading, getting sworn in on Friday. But the following week I'll be back in the schools. I want to meet everyone. And just thank you for being so nice to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Is there any public comment on the superintendent's report? Seeing none, under announcements, I missed one. I believe Mr. McKnight has a presentation to make.
Good evening. I'd like to take this time to introduce Alice Sweet as our senior school board representative and Mackenzie Meyer as our junior school board representative.
Mackenzie Ella's been with us for a while now, so good luck in following in her footsteps. Item 7, curriculum and instruction. Mr. Kurtz couldn't be here tonight. The last several curriculum and instruction committee meetings centered on presentations by Mr. McKnight and Mrs. Rexroth and a discussion of purchasing textbooks. The next curriculum and instruction committee meeting is scheduled for November 23rd at 6 o'clock. Any public comment on curriculum and instruction? Moving right along to building and grounds, Mr. Dowski, is there a facilities committee meeting report?
There is not this evening. We haven't met since the last vehicle. And the November, looks like the November, I know I couldn't get the facilities committee meeting, and it looks like we canceled finance as well for the one meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were going to do a joint meeting, but it looks like a lot of the administrators have another commitment on the 17th. So I figured tonight we would just figure out when we're going to meet that work best for everybody in the two committees.
Okay. I guess we don't have a whole lot of days between now and the end of November. But
What about does the 18th work for everybody? Mr. Martino, Mr. Wolf?
It works for me. Let me just advise the rest of the board that because of some decisions we have to make for the bond refinancing, we have to have a meeting in November.
is that why it sounds familiar?
That's 5:30.
We do have there's a negotiations meeting at 5:30, so maybe we can do 6:30.
7 o'clock, whatever works for you guys.
So
7 o'clock, about the 18th.
Does that work for you, Mr. Small?
Works for me. I'll contact the auditor tomorrow and make sure that they can do it.
Okay.
So that's 7 o'clock on the 18th. Is there anything else, Mr. Dowski?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment on building and grounds? If not, we'll move on to finance. Mr. Basil?
We don't have anything to report because the last time we met actually was prior to the last voting meeting. So there's no change in status. I think we're waiting on Jim Thompson. He's been meeting with Mr. Hurley and the facilities director and others in terms of his evaluation of the school district. And I believe he's trying to put together a rough draft and a preliminary meeting for the board this month sometime. But he indicated that he needed to get back into some of the buildings and look at I guess a checklist that he has of items that he needs to evaluate. So hopefully he'll get that done this week, and we will have something to report before the end of the month.
Thank you. Mr. Small, this payment to the attorney Bruce Goldenberg, is that to be approved tonight, or can that wait for the voting meeting? What is this for?
You can wait.
Can wait?
Well, that's a little late, isn't it?
I have a question.
Oh.
I have a question for the finance committee.
Yeah.
Mr. Small had indicated that without the budget being settled in Harrisburg, that we would be able to pay our bills through January, I believe.
I think it's a lot. I think when we looked at it at the last finance committee meeting, we were looking at the end of March, beginning of April. And with the delay of the PSER payments and charter school payments, it pushed that date back even farther.
Okay. So will there be discussion at some point in time, if as we get closer to that goal, for strategies to maximize the resources to make sure that maybe our seniors continue their education? If the doors do end up closing, are there strategies for?
Sure. Well, I would hope that we get a budget passed before sometime in April of 2016, but heaven forbid that's the case. I mean, the only other alternative out there would be for the school district to probably get a tax anticipation revenue note to carry the district through the balance of the fiscal year.
That may not be necessary. I was handed a paper right at the start of the meeting about a possible breakthrough, which I'll discuss when we get to the legislative review.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board on the budget transfers or copy paper bid? So obviously the next Finance Committee meeting will be a joint meeting with facilities on 11/18 at 7 o'clock, correct? Okay. Any public comment on the finance report? Seeing none, we'll move on to presentation by board members. Mr. Basil, any secretary's correspondence?
Well, apparently we got a sample ballot from the Board of Elections sometime in October, but other than that, there's nothing else to report.
All right, thank you. Is there a BCIU report?
Thank you, Mr. Martino. I think all on the board are aware of the IU struggles to the state budget not being passed, so let's continue working on the money that we took out in treasury anticipation notes. They do have, it's interesting, they did put a strategy in place, and I'll pass that around so everybody can see, but several of the other IUs actually came to Berks to come up to ask what their strategy was, since I guess we were one of the few ones that actually had one in place and got our loans all lined up before this even occurred. You might have some more updated information, Mr. Martino. Their opinion was that the budget would probably get passed at least by January, since there are some folks that are coming up for elections and we have to start getting signatures. So with that added pressure, they would probably pass a budget. And I know Mr. Hurley did go to, they launched a new superintendent's academy, because there are, I believe, somewhere, I think there's like 5 or 6 new superintendents in the county. So they thought it might be appropriate to launch this and get the new or promoted superintendents familiarized with Berks County and some of the processes to help them out. I believe there's, Mr. Hurley, is it 4 meetings that we're going to have? Yeah. So I guess apropos, Mr. Harris, you could maybe both of you go together. I'm not sure, but we can work that out. And, hopefully that'll be some good information for you. So, that's about it, Mr. Martino. Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Mr. Rathke. Mr. Harris is also usually a one-day training for superintendent and board president, which would be sometime after the new year, I would imagine, just so you both hear the same things at the same time.
You get it.
Moving on, is there a career and technology board report?
We did meet the end of October, and I apologize, I don't have my notes with me. There wasn't anything that really stuck out that we voted on. We did tour the building trades program, which was a neat experience, and they have a full program, but they said they actually do not have enough students to fill all the requests that they get from area employers for the building trades. So they haven't kind of grown that program, and it is very successful. And I know last year they sold the house that they built, and we saw some pictures of the new house that's underway and it's coming along, and we're hoping to have that under roof for the winter so that the kids can work on it during the winter. But again, they have some really good programs. It's neat to get to tour the different programs and we're out there for the meetings as well. So I know that they did send the short reports out to you folks. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.
What I think in today's job market, I think building trades is a very viable alternative. The legislative report, let me discuss the budget briefly. It changes from day to day. A week ago, the latest plan I saw was that all future property tax increases would go to referendum. And when I saw that, I got excited because I think that would be great, where the community as a whole would get to vote on whether to raise taxes, not 9 members of the school board. Now that talk has sort of died away, and 3 days ago the talk was they would take the gambling money into the general fund instead of having it for property tax relief, and then they would raise the sales tax for property tax relief. And that just struck me as a shell game, but what do I know? What I was handed at the beginning of this meeting is dated 1:49 p.m. today, and it says, for the first time in the state's 5-month-old budget standoff, Governor Wolf and Republican legislators indicated Monday they had reached a tentative agreement on key pieces of the state's long-overdue spending plan. Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman said negotiators were discussing a $30.26 billion budget that would boost education funding through a sales-type tax hike, offer corresponding property tax relief, and reform the state's pension system. While signaling that agreeing to a tentative framework was a significant step forward, Corman cautioned that many details still needed to be worked out and approved by legislators and Wolf. We're not done by any stretch, he said. And I'll tell you my fears with this. The sales tax hike, once it goes up, the sales taxes are up. The property tax relief reduces property taxes, waiting for the school boards to vote each year on raising property taxes. So while the sales tax increase is sort of permanent, the property tax relief may not be. The other thing is Governor Wolf's last proclaimed discussion of property tax relief was not across the board to every school district in the state, but rather targeted more toward some schools and less toward others. So there's still a lot to be learned about this. Any questions about the legislative report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the student board representative report. Ms. Sweet.
Sorry. So, as you heard from Mr. Harris, our Lady Blazers soccer team just made District 3 triple A champions. So they've also qualified for state, and they have a game tomorrow in Exeter. So it's probably going to be one of the last close by. So I encourage you all to go and support them. We also have one girl. Oh. I can talk loud. Okay. We also have one girl qualify for state cross country. Our boys soccer, no, I won't yell, I promise. Boys soccer made districts, and as you can tell from those points, fall sports are kind of concluding, although we did have a winter kickoff for winter sports. So as fall ends, winter begins. With sports, we have a trainer who is currently at the high school after school on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. He goes and he does different training exercise, but it's not specifically for the sports players, it's for any student who's interested. So they're kind of branching out the sports program. Berks County Interscholastic Mathematics Championship was just held at the high school, and those results will be coming out in the next few weeks, so I'll keep you posted with that. We had our senior county and District 10 chorus tryouts, and we had several students make it, so that was pretty exciting for the chorus. We had Safe Trick or Treat Night, which was a huge success. The children love it. We had them wrapping around the building. It was amazing to see them come in and just like come over to complete strangers and get candy and happily, merrily skip through the halls. It was fabulous. We had our PSAT, SAT, and ASVAB tests all this past month, so students are a little drained from tests. STEM programs, thanks to all the administration and Mr. Harris, are being increased at the high school, so all of us STEM and STEAM fans are pretty proud of that. Dual enrollment and early college opportunities are increasing. Our marching band just qualified for championships, which will be held on November 15th at Hershey. They're in the top of the Liberty A class, so if you know anything about marching band, that's a huge honor for them. November 10th is the last day of the first quarter, and our report cards will be released November 18th at the high school. And this is actually the first time that we're having our report cards all digitally, so congrats to Mr. McKnight. It's going to definitely help with the whole paper cost. Although if a student can't access the internet, he is providing them a paper copy, so there's no problems there. He's also producing Tuesday folders online to continue to release the paper costs. Parent-teacher conferences are coming up, and the superintendent student advisory just launched, and the next meeting for that will be November 18th.
Thank you, Ms.
Board.
Reed.
Thank you.
Any board questions for Ms.
We
Reed?
should also make sure that it's not high school, but, you know, our Michigan football team did have a championship game at the high school. They did lose by 1 point. And I gotta go back to my cheerleading roots, our midget mites and all that, they swept, they have all pretty good. Yeah, so I gotta honor my cheerleading roots.
And what time would the soccer game be at Exeter tomorrow?
I believe it's at
7:30.
7:30.
What time, please?
7:30.
Under the lights?
I would hope so.
Otherwise,
Yes.
Or is it a glow in the
it's a
dark
global,
ball?
it's a global.
Go either way.
Just test how skilled they really are. Can they find the ball?
Thank you.
Is there a transportation report? No. Is there any public comment on the presentations? Wow. Moving on to item 11, is there a motion to approve the resolution regarding the notice of charges against a professional employee?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Radowski, second by Mr. Wolf. Comments or questions by the board? Seeing none, Mr. Basil?
I have a first by Mr. Radowski and a second by Mr. Wolf. Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Radowski?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Any public comment on that motion? Moving on, is there a motion to approve the revised job description for the assistant to the superintendent?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Speed, second by Mr. Radowski. Comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
First by Mr. Speed, second by Mr. Radowski. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Radowski?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public comment on item 12. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 13, motion to approve the new job description for Director of Elementary Education.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Radowski, second by Mr. Speed. Comments or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Basil?
A motion by Mr. Radowski, second by Mr. Speed for number 13. Mr. Rathgeb?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Radowski?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public comment on item 13. Seeing none, we'll move on to a motion to approve the resolution regarding the reorganization of the District Central Administration as presented by the solicitor.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Radowski. Comments or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Basil?
I have a motion for 14, Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Radowski. Mr. Speed.
Yes.
Mr. Radowski.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites.
Yes.
Mr. Rathke.
Yes.
Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public comment on item 14. Item 15, motion to approve the resolution regarding reassignment of professional employee to assistant to the superintendent.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Speed. Comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
I have a motion for 15 by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Speed. Mr. Radowski.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites.
Yes.
Mr. Rathke.
Yes.
Mr. Speed.
Yes.
Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public comment on item 15. Seeing none, and I'd like to say congratulations to Mr. Hurley, who is now effectively the assistant to the superintendent. Moving on to item 16, motion to approve the resolution regarding reassignment of professional employee to Director of Elementary Education.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Radowski, second by Mr. Speed. Comments or questions?
Is that a 12-month position?
Yes. Mr. Basil?
I have a motion for 16 by Mr. Radowski, a second by Mr. Speed. Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites.
Yes.
Mr. Rathke.
No.
Mr. Speed.
Yes.
Mr. Radowski.
Yes.
Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Public comment on item 16.
Just a quick question. In that the attachments are provided to the public, and there's people wondering, what were these changes made? Can you maybe summarize for the benefit of the public what happened to the Director of Curriculum position and how things have been realigned?
Mr. Harris, you want to address that since you were directly involved?
Okay, which one first would you like to discuss?
Okay, well, there's a lot here, so I guess there was a motion to reorganize the district central administration. Can you briefly touch on what that was?
Okay, well, the emphasis is more on the academic side. I can handle the majority of the operations, so the resources are now going to be directed into the classroom, into the schools for teacher support. So with the assistant to the superintendent, Mr. Hurley, taking over the, per se, academic lead, and now putting direct resources into the the elementary ed area, with the focus on assisting the teachers, the principals, and the staff there. I'll be coming forward with another position in the future that we're still tweaking. Hopefully, we're working on making it budget neutral, but that's what we're working on right now for STEM and early college.
You said STEM and early childhood?
Early college, for secondary ed.
Okay, and then I guess my second question was, there was a Director of Curriculum position, and has that been absorbed into a different role?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain how?
Well, with Mr. Hurley's expertise and the Director of Elementary Ed will both be taking on that role and performing those
So,
duties.
because right now I know that they started looking at curriculum K-12, and there's been a process in place to start looking at what needs to be rewritten, what needs to be renewed, how that implies new textbook purchase, and if that stops kind of mid-cycle.
Oh, no, that's still going on. That's still going on. We're looking at the curriculum teams at the schools, and the people who are still doing the work are still here. They're just assigned different priorities.
Okay, and will those attachments be on the website so that we can see the descriptions?
Yes.
The job description?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hicks. Other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 17, a motion to approve the Act 93 Administrator Compensation Plan retroactive to July 1st.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Wolf, second by Ms. Radowski. Comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
I have a motion for 17 by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Radowski. Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Ms. Radowski?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public comment on item 17. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 18. Personnel issues do need to be voted on tonight because some of the dates are already in effect. So is there a motion for any of the personnel
Motion for 18A through C as amended.
As amended. So moved. 18A through C as amended.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Basil for 18A through C as amended. Comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
Motion for 18A through C as amended. First by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Basil. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Radowski?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Any public comment on the personnel moves? Item 19, I'm sorry.
I just want- Just for clarification, with Mr. Shandon resigning, will the job be opening back up, or we, Floral Marino, 367 Buckhead Lane, sorry, Sandy. Or will that position be offered to the current acting athletic director?
Currently, we're going to keep things the way they are. There are some details we need to work out with the current acting director because he is a retiree. So we're trying to work through those. We had conversations earlier today about that. So we're not sure how long he can stay in the position as a retiree coming back.
Okay.
So once that's resolved in conversations with him, it'll either be posted or we'll go as long as we can, as long as he can work under current conditions. So,
Okay, just nice to get things calm.
yes. Yes.
Thank you.
To answer, just add to that, we won't be doing without, if that was your concern. Item 19, programs. Any board comments or questions on any of the programs? I'd like to thank the donation for the Kenneth J. Murray Scholarship Fund and to the Optimist Club for their donations. So thank you. These will be approved at the next meeting. Other comments or questions? Any public comment on the programs? Seeing none, we'll move on to policy. Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Martino. Yes, we did have a policy meeting this evening. We had a presentation by Mr. McKnight to change the model of summer school to what's called credit recovery and make it transform it, I should say, from a punitive event to something that will allow the students to stay on track and graduate with their peers. So we were happy to recommend that changes to the policy Mr. McKnight worked on. Thank you for his work on that. We also made a change to the attendance policy 204 by Mr. Hurley. That the committee did review five different policies. This close to getting the sixth, which would give us a clean slate going into the new board cycle. We do have one policy, as I said, that needs to be looked at, but otherwise, this would represent the end of the PSBA 0 policy, which is the board policies. So we would have reviewed all those and made changes except for this one. So we still have one to go. That'll have to be transitioned into the next board cycle. At this time, we do not have a meeting planned for December until we reorganize and we find out who the chairperson would be and members and let them agree on what the date should be. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Any public comment on policy? Seeing none, moving on to transportation, the disapproval of the bus driver stops and turns, as the bus drivers call it, is just basically, Mr. Small, if I'm correct, just their schedules of each bus stop they make and what time they make it.
Were these changes from the opening of the bridge and any bus route changes resulting from that?
What is presented here is exactly as they were being run last week, so that would be subsequent. As far as the number of changes, I don't have an answer for you on that. This is just as we receive them, and they're being reviewed. We're looking at them now.
I've talked to Mr. Small after the reorganization meeting. I think we're overdue for a transportation meeting because there's some questions about several things involved in the transportation contracts. Am I correct?
Especially if this NTSB pilot program that they're talking about goes through, that'd be significant cost.
Yeah, Mr. Wolf pointed out to me before the meeting there are again talking about adding seat belts to school buses, which is a large cost. And on top of that, the impact on the drivers. If you have seat belts, the driver's going to be responsible for making sure they're being used. And with the new buses, with the height of the seats, the only way the driver's going to be able to know is to walk up and down the aisle. I don't know what that's going to do to schedules. I mean, that's just going to be a nightmare. Anyway, is there any public comment on?
I have a question about that.
Yes.
The routes, do they get posted on the website after it's approved, or what's the?
No.
Should they?
No. No.
Not really, and they change during the year too, as kids are added or move away or whatever.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And I know when I drove a bus here, in
I
fact,
don't
on
think you want
Meeting
them
House Road,
posted. I wouldn't want to post it, that's why I'm asking.
on Meeting House Road, there's a sign that says school bus stop ahead. And the child graduated 4 years ago, so I don't think it would make sense for us to post the bus.
I'm not
schedules.
requesting that we do, I was just asking if we did, thank you.
Is there any public comment on transportation? Seeing none, moving on to old business. Is there any old business?
I had a quick question about the State of the Middle School address, the State of the Union address from the middle school. Are we going to get that at one of the open meetings? I had requested it, that Mrs.
The presentation by Mrs. Rexford?
I didn't see it on the agenda.
I can do it, except that I don't see it. I mean, I can talk through it, but there's...
How about the next time?
That's fine.
Can we work it into the...
I was prepared, but
Thank
I
you.
didn't know if it was going to come in the curriculum and instruction report. That's what I was actually expecting, so.
We'll just make a point to get that out. I thought it was a really dynamic presentation. I'd like the public to see it. Good things happening all around the district.
Okay. Moving on to new business. As the board looked at the meeting dates for 2016, any comments or questions?
Should we, I don't think we'll do that in December, once the new board is seated. So I think we want to wait until, do have a couple of members that will be on, so I think it's only respectful that we meet for them.
I think the only reason we didn't wait is because the board meets every second and fourth Monday. And if you look at the calendar that Mrs. Kramer put together, it's every second and fourth Monday. Am I correct?
That is correct. The only thing that we might want to consider is a time change.
I know in the past, I know we had talked about maybe pushing it back to 7.
The time change would be the only thing.
I have no problem waiting. I mean, we're not voting on it tonight, so.
Yeah, so that was my only comment.
Um,
But I mean, should we delay it till the December meeting?
The dates can actually be approved. It would just be the time, if we stick to the second and fourth Monday. So the date calendar can be approved. And I won't post it in the paper until after the reorg anyhow.
Okay.
And item 23B, Nutrition Group has politely asked if they could put a copy of their job application on our website. And I suggested that we wait for the board meeting to see if anybody had any objection to that.
Seems like a logical thing to do.
Yeah, it did, but I didn't want to do it unilaterally, so.
Thank you for asking. It's fine.
I have a problem with that.
Okay. Any public comment on new business? Any public presentation on any issue? Is there a motion to adjourn? Wait.
Oh, wait.
All right, Bob Pennington, 213 Ashford Drive, Douglasville. I'm just going to be real brief on two issues. I feel it's inevitable that sometime in March or April, we're going to be talking about furloughs. And I would just say to you guys that we need to make sure that we do this in a timely fashion to make these decisions. Because, like just an example, starting this year and trying to decide what to do with math groups, it was the third week of the school year, second week of the school year, until we finally got those things solidified. And it was because we didn't know the makeup of our team and who was going to be the teaching math, who wasn't going to be teaching math, who was allowed to teach math, who wasn't allowed to teach math. So it creates a lot of discourse and there's a lack of continuity. And this has been happening for many years with the reassignment of teachers. And when you have a team, it's just like any sports club or team. You know, you get to know one another, you work well together. And when you have this constant changing, it causes confusion and chaos. So I would just say, along with that, I said this many years ago, my door is open all the time. And you may have a superintendent, you may have the principal that comes to you and tells you what's going on, but it's like if you were buying a car, you won't just take this salesman's word for it over the phone. So I want you to come in and see what I do on a daily basis. And I know you all have other jobs to work, jobs that you get paid for. But if you can make any time in your schedule, I'm imploring you to come visit me. And I'll have a nice cushy, well, it's not cushy, but a plastic chair waiting for you. And spend the time with me. So you get a full idea of what we're dealing with on a daily and a weekly basis. So I really hope that you consider that. The second item I have, and congratulate Mr. Bays on his 8 years, it kind of goes along with that. We've had 3 teachers that retired from my building in this past year. Tracy Schultz had retired due to health issues. We had Carol James, who had about 20 years in the district. And then we had Lenny Smith, who had 42 years teaching and 24 years as a baseball coach. And to my knowledge, I don't think any of those individuals have been recognized. And I think that's a shame. You're talking about somebody who put a large commitment and time into children over the last several years. So I would hope that you would at least recognize them in some way, shape, or form. Lenny's a basic guy, probably just go with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But some recognition would be great. So that's basically all I have. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pennington.
Mr. Pennington, let me address both your points. As far as any layoffs, personally, I agree with you. I think this past year, we had information as of one date, and we were trying to wait for a future date, and it doesn't work that way. And I think next year, depending on what the board decides, we're going to have to determine a date that the data falls on, that we're going to use that date, that data to make a decision.
I agree.
And as far as the recognition, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, somebody puts 20 years or 40 years in, they deserve to be recognized. So. Any other public comment?
Zoe Sweet, 1856 Close Street Road. I just want to thank you for having so many clubs, opportunities at the middle school and high school and elementary school. But lots of those advisors are either aides or librarians and don't have web pages to announce the club meetings and what they do at the clubs. So my suggestion, and there could be like a web page that we can have for the clubs that they can post what the next meetings are and they can post what they've done at the meetings. Because most of them don't have any web pages or don't even go to the middle school or the high school where they are doing the clubs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great idea.
Mr. Harris, that would be an administrative decision, so.
I got it.
Seeing no other public comment, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.